everyone. This is a brief video to hopefully give you a little bit of orientation to where we're at in this week 14. So for Monday's class, it was asynchronous because I felt like you all needed the extra time, and as did I. I did get through all of the drafts that had been submitted, so if you haven't already, go ahead and look through my feedback that I provided you with. And if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to ask. We can also schedule a phone conversation to talk about the feedback I gave you. Even though my official office hours are not until Friday, one possibility might be if you wanted to chat with me during your regularly scheduled time frame on Wednesday, even though our class is asynchronous, that would be a time when I know that I'd be available and potentially you'd be available too. But best thing is to email me. So the reading for Wednesday the 29th, which is what this asynchronous video is for, is just to read through the rubric. So I thought I would give you a little bit of a tour of the rubric for this project. You could have found the rubric on Blackboard under course content and paper 3 materials. And I thought it would be a good time to use the rubric to just make sure that everybody is understanding the expectations for this final project. I know we've done some lessons about it, but I just want to make sure everything's super clear. Because even though your REC final version is due on Friday, the first draft of paper 3 is actually due Monday by midnight. And this had to be such a short turnaround because of how quickly the end of semester is approaching. So use the extra time this week to not only revise your REC paper to make it as good as it can be, but also to get started on your draft. So one thing that might be kind of comforting to you is a reminder that the number of words for paper 3 is significantly fewer than previous papers. There are, remember, 2 parts of Project 3. There's the radical revision, which is you can think of it as the remix. It's where you are taking your existing topic and adapting it to a new genre and to a new audience, and make sure you have a clear purpose in trying to reach that new audience. So some of these rubric items will look familiar to you because they've been on other papers too. So audience consideration, and also audience selection. So it needs to be clear, as I look at your writing, why you chose that audience. How would that audience have a stake in your issue or topic? And make sure that you've made choices in your writing that specifically speak to those audience members. You know, what matters to them, what they're afraid of, what they get excited by, and also what genre makes the most sense, which leads us into the next category, which is the selection of the genre. So you do want to make sure that your chosen audience can actually be reached through this genre. So if you're creating like a social media campaign and your audience is people 85 years old and older, that probably wouldn't be the best match. So, always really think about how do I reach this audience best? There needs to be about 450 words. So for those of you who are thinking of creating something that doesn't have close to 450 words, remember that you need to find some other way of writing 450 words. It might be that you write an accompanying letter or an accompanying email to somebody to explain to them what you are asking them to do, or maybe you expand the item that you're working on. I know I saw students make a variety of different choices with that last semester. There's also a category called genre design, and as you know from last week's readings, when we are creating something that has color and images and what we call multimodal elements, then it needs to be clear that you made choices purposefully. So, making more important words bolded would be an example of that. How are you laying out the words? How are you incorporating color or images? as they're appropriate for the particular genre. And so the nice thing is the rhetorical addendum is your space to explain all the choices you made. So I don't have to read your mind and think to myself, well, why did he put that random color there? You can actually explain it. Argument and purpose. So is it clear what you're trying to do or argue in your new genre? Or is it like way too much all over the place? So basically, do you support the points you make? And this is something where your peer reviewers can help you a lot next week when we do that activity. They can try to clarify for you where they get confused when they were reading it, and so on. So that's the new genre. And then remember, you're writing a rhetorical addendum, and the rhetorical addendum is you explaining all of this. I shortened the length, so it's only 300 words minimum. That being said, make sure you do these 4 things in the rhetorical addendum. So you're going to thoroughly describe who the audience of the radical revision is. Please don't just say teenagers or something really vague and general like that. Pick a particular audience of teenagers that you could actually hypothetically reach. Maybe it's teenagers who grew up in your hometown, or maybe really think about the more specific the better, because then you'll be able to really think about what does that particular group care about, what types of personal references will they be drawn to, and so on. Why you chose that audience. So, really think about maybe when you did that onion activity a few weeks back, what drew you in about that audience? And what do you know about this audience? Ideally, you did a little bit of extra research about this group. And then you would just incorporate like what websites or other resources taught you those things about that group. So a great example would be going back to that veganism example topic. Let's say you picked the beef industry, and then you realize you need to focus on this one particular group of cattle ranches in Montana. And you chose them for a very specific reason. You did some research about the types of methods they use, so on and so forth. So make sure that it's clear how you know what you know. And then the how-to guides that we looked at last week, you can find the links. They were emailed out to you in the Blackboard announcements. They were the things that were called an internet scavenger hunt. That is filled with how-to guides for all the different genres. So when you say, I chose to structure my podcast this way because this how-to guide said to do that, that is great. Just make sure that you link the online how-to guide that you used. So remember, the whole point of this assignment is for you to get that kind of unusual but also very usual in the real world experience of being forced to try a genre you've never tried before. And that's why seeking out models online and also seeking out some particular articles about how to do that genre well is something that I encouraged you to do. I like to call them how-to guides, but they're sometimes called other things like strong email etiquette could be another way of phrasing it, or how to make a great podcast. So things like that. You'll also want to, in your rhetorical addendum, explain why this genre is a good choice for reaching this particular audience. And lastly, if there are any works cited for either part of your paper 3, that's where you would include the works cited or references page. So if you're using some of the facts that you used in your RAC paper, for example, you would want to cite the sources that you got those facts from here. And then there are 4 postscript questions. you don't have to answer those until the final draft, so you can hang on and we'll go over those next week. But I did just want to make sure that the rubric was super clear. Because I know that it's the end of the semester, this is a paper that is not as time consuming or mentally taxing as the previous two papers. That being said, if you save it till the very last minute, it will not result in a good grade. So make sure that you get started on it soon. Before I sign off on this video, I thought I would just remind you that for Friday, May 1st, it is our third asynchronous class in a row. And the only task you have is to read the C range Project 3s, which you can find on Blackboard under Course Content and Paper 3 Materials. And as you're reading, I think you're going to see right away ways that the writer could better meet the genre and do a better job at the genre, or reach their audience more effectively. And when you open up the file, you'll see it looks like this. And this is their entire Project 3. So here's the flyer they made, here are the postscript questions, and here's the rhetorical addendum. And as you read through it, just jot down some thoughts about why it's not the most effective response to this project. Like, what feedback would you give them if they were in a peer review group of yours? And then once you've thought about that, the assignment associated with that is a discussion board post. So I know you'll be busy doing the finishing touches on your RAC final draft. But there are 2 threads on the discussion board, and it's all under the heading Week 14 Discussion Board. There's one that asks you to reflect on how Project 3 is going so far and kind of share with your classmates about that. And then the second thread is about what your thoughts were as you read the C range Project 3s. Monday, there's no class because your draft 1 of Project 3 is due. So we will get back to regular class next week, and then the end of the semester comes soon after that. So please reach out to me if I can support you in any additional ways, and hang in there. We are getting very close to the end. All right, take care. Thanks. Bye.